There is something happening right now, on a leaf somewhere in a warm and ordinary garden, that has been happening for nearly 200 million years, and almost nobody thinks about it at night. Welcome to Sleepy Science. Tonight, we are going to spend a long, unhurried time thinking about butterflies together. Very slowly, very gently, the way butterflies themselves seem to move through the world. If you feel like it, you can find us on Patreon. There's a link in the description, and it means a great deal to us. But for now, just settle in. Butterflies belong to the order Lepidoptera, a word that comes from the ancient Greek for scale-winged. And that name, when you sit with it for a moment, is one of the more quietly perfect names in all of science. Because that is exactly what they are. Scale-winged. If you were ever to look at a butterfly wing under a microscope, and I hope someday you do, or at least look at photographs, you would see that the colors are not painted on, not dyed or printed or stained. They are made of scales. Tiny, overlapping, almost impossibly delicate scales, like the tiles of a miniature mosaic, built by a craftsperson with an extraordinarily steady hand, and no interest in ever being thanked for it. Each scale is shaped roughly like a flattened oval, and they lay across the wing in rows, overlapping like the shingles on a very small roof. There are, on a single butterfly wing, hundreds of thousands of these scales. Hundreds of thousands, each one placed with a precision that has nothing to do with intention, and everything to do with the slow, patient logic of biology. It is worth sitting with that for a moment. The idea that what looks, from a distance, like a single brushstroke of blue or orange or deep amber, is actually a surface of extraordinary complexity, built piece by piece, scale by scale, in the dark interior of a chrysalis, without any light to see by. Those scales are not just for color, though. They serve other purposes too, which is something I find quietly moving about the way nature works. Almost nothing is only one thing. The scales on a butterfly's wing also help regulate temperature, providing a kind of fine insulation that allows the butterfly to absorb warmth from sunlight more efficiently than it could with a bare membrane. They can also reduce drag in flight, acting almost like tiny aerodynamic features that help the butterfly move through air with a little less effort. And in some species, the scales scatter and diffuse light in ways that help conceal the butterfly from predators, or attract a mate, or warn away a threat. A single scale is doing several jobs at once, and it does all of them without thinking, without effort, without any awareness at all that it is extraordinary. There is something gently humbling about that, the way complexity can exist, in complete indifference to its own existence. The order Lepidoptera contains not just butterflies, but moths as well, and the two are more closely related than people often realize. In fact, the distinction between a butterfly and a moth is not quite as clean as most of us were taught as children. The general rules we learned, that butterflies are colorful and active by day, and moths are dull and active by night, are useful guidelines at best and exceptions at worst. There are moths that fly in daylight, moths that are brilliantly colored, moths with markings so vivid and precise that they are sometimes mistaken for butterflies by people who have spent years studying the subject. What actually separates the two groups, more reliably than anything else, is the shape of the antennae. Butterflies tend to have antennae that end in a small club, a little thickening at the tip, like a tiny drumstick held up to the world. Moths, by contrast, tend to have antennae that are feathery, or tapered, or simply thread-like without that clubbed ending. It is a small distinction, almost laughably small when you consider that we are using it to divide hundreds of thousands of species into two vast and loosely imagined categories. Nature, as always, is indifferent to the boxes we build for it. There are roughly 17,000 to 20,000 known species of butterfly in the world, depending on how you count them and who you ask. That number has always struck me as both very large and very small at the same time. Large because 20,000 is genuinely a great many species, each with its own wing pattern, its own preferred habitat, its own way of surviving. And small because there are approximately 160,000 known species of moth, which means that for every butterfly fluttering through your garden on a summer afternoon, there are roughly 8 moths somewhere in the shadows, doing their quiet work unseen. The moths, it turns out, are the majority. They always were. We just weren't paying attention. The oldest butterfly fossils we have found date to roughly 56 million years ago, placing their origin in the Paleocene epoch, a warm and humid time that followed the mass extinction that ended the age of non-avian dinosaurs. It is worth imagining, just for a moment, what the world looked like then. Dense, steaming forests, the air thick with moisture, plants spreading quickly into the new open space left by everything that had died. And somewhere in that warm, recovering world, a butterfly, perhaps not quite like any butterfly we would recognize today, but a butterfly nonetheless, opened its wings for the first time. The Lepidopteran lineage itself goes back much further, perhaps 200 million years or more, meaning that the ancestors of butterflies and moths were already alive and flying when the first dinosaurs were still finding their footing on a young and violent Earth. The scales, those miniature shingles of color and function, may be among the oldest structures of their kind, still in use by any living animal. One of the things that makes butterflies worth thinking about slowly, especially in the quiet of a night like this, is how much of their lives is invisible to us. We see the butterfly, the fluttering, colorful, alive in the sunlight butterfly, and we think we know what it is. But the butterfly, at that moment, is only one of 4 completely different forms that a single animal will take across the course of its life. There is the egg, small and often overlooked, laid with great care on a very specific kind of leaf. There is the caterpillar, the larva, a creature that seems to have almost nothing in common with the butterfly it will become. There is the chrysalis, the pupa, that still and seemingly inert stage that we tend to glance at and move past. And then there is the butterfly itself, the imago, as scientists call it, the final, winged, complete form. 4 forms, 1 animal, a life that changes so completely that if you showed someone the caterpillar and the butterfly side by side, without explanation, they might reasonably assume you were looking at creatures from entirely different families. The process by which a caterpillar becomes a butterfly is called metamorphosis, a word borrowed from Greek meaning roughly transformation of shape. And what actually happens inside the chrysalis is one of those things that becomes more quietly remarkable the more carefully you look at it. For many years, the prevailing understanding was that the caterpillar essentially dissolved inside the chrysalis, broke down into a kind of biological soup, and was then rebuilt almost from scratch into the butterfly. And in a sense, that is not wrong. Many of the caterpillar's tissues do break down. The process is dramatic at a cellular level. Muscles dissolve, organs are repurposed, the entire architecture of the creature is rearranged. But it is not a total erasure. There is continuity in the chaos. Certain clusters of cells, called imaginal discs, survive the dissolution largely intact. They were present all along, dormant inside the caterpillar, waiting. These discs are the blueprints for the butterfly's body. The wings, the legs, the eyes, the antennae. They unfurl in the chrysalis, the way a fern unrolls in spring, slowly, patiently, without hurry, as if they have all the time in the world. And here is something that I keep coming back to, something I find difficult to fully wrap language around. Studies have suggested that certain memories formed by the caterpillar can survive metamorphosis and be retained by the butterfly. In one set of experiments, caterpillars were trained to avoid a particular smell by associating it with a mild, unpleasant sensation. After those caterpillars had completed metamorphosis and emerged as adult butterflies, a significant number of them still showed aversion to that same smell, which means something of the caterpillar, some small, quiet memory, some thread of experience, survived the dissolution, survived the near-total rebuilding of the body, came through the other side. I am not sure what to do with that information exactly, but there is something in it that feels important. The idea that even in the midst of a transformation so complete, it barely resembles change at all. Something small and personal persists. The egg stage of a butterfly's life is one of the most overlooked and quietly beautiful things in nature. Butterfly eggs come in an enormous variety of shapes: round, oval, ribbed like tiny melons, sculpted like miniature barrels, some with intricate surface textures that look, under magnification, like the work of a very patient and very small architect. A female butterfly does not lay her eggs randomly. She selects the plant with great care, using sensors in her feet. Yes, her feet, to taste the plant before she decides whether to lay on it. She is checking, essentially, whether this is a plant her caterpillars will be able to eat. Because caterpillars are often specialized, sometimes so specialized, that a particular species of butterfly will only lay eggs on a single species of plant, and her caterpillars will eat nothing else, and will starve if placed on any other leaf in the world. She carries in her feet the chemical knowledge of what her children will need, and she makes her choice accordingly, tasting the world with each step she takes. Monarch butterflies, perhaps the most recognized butterfly in North America, lay their eggs exclusively on milkweed plants. This is not a preference, but a necessity. Milkweed contains compounds called cardinalides, which are toxic to most animals, but which monarch caterpillars have evolved to tolerate and, in fact, to absorb and store in their own bodies. By the time a monarch caterpillar has finished eating its milkweed and sealed itself inside a chrysalis, it carries within it a concentration of toxins that makes it genuinely dangerous to eat. A bird that tries to eat a monarch butterfly, and many do, at least once, will likely become ill. And because birds can learn from experience, many of them learn not to try again. The monarch's bright orange and black coloring is not decorative. It is a warning, written in the language of color, that says very quietly, "I am not worth the trouble." This strategy, where a genuinely toxic animal advertises its toxicity with bright colors, is called aposematism, a beautiful word for something that is, at its core, simply honesty. And then there is mimicry, which is aposematism's less scrupulous neighbor. The viceroy butterfly, which looks remarkably like the monarch. Same orange, same black, similar size, was long thought to be a classic example of Batesian mimicry, a harmless animal wearing the colors of a dangerous one, to trick predators into leaving it alone. A kind of biological costume, a bluff held for millions of years. But more recent research suggests the viceroy may not be quite as harmless as assumed. It too may carry some degree of chemical protection, absorbed from the plants its caterpillars eat, which makes the relationship between monarch and viceroy something more like a mutual reinforcement, each one making the warning signal more credible, simply by existing alongside the other, looking nearly the same. There is something quietly interesting in the idea that what looked like deception might have been, all along, a kind of collaboration. The caterpillar stage is, in terms of eating, the most single-minded period in a butterfly's life. A caterpillar does one thing above all others: eat. It eats with a focus and a dedication. That would be either admirable or alarming in a creature of any other size. In its short larval life, which might last anywhere from a few weeks to several months depending on the species, a caterpillar can increase its body mass by something in the range of 100 times or more. 100 times. If a human baby grew at that rate, it would weigh, within a few months, roughly as much as a large family car. The caterpillar eats constantly, pausing only to shed its skin, a process called molting, as its body grows too large for its current coat. A caterpillar typically molts 4 or 5 times during its life, each time emerging slightly larger, slightly more itself, before returning immediately to the work of eating. It is, if you think about it, a life of almost monastic simplicity. Eat, grow, shed, eat again, with a profound and invisible future, already written into every cell. Caterpillars are, despite their soft and slow appearance, remarkably well-defended creatures. Some are toxic, having absorbed the chemicals of the plants they eat. Some are camouflaged, green caterpillars on green leaves, brown caterpillars on brown bark. Some so perfectly matched to their surroundings that they are nearly impossible to see, even when you are looking directly at them. Others use mimicry. Some caterpillars have evolved markings that make them look, from a certain angle and distance, like the face of a small snake, complete with large false eyes and a widened head shape. Whether a bird actually mistakes this for a snake is debated, but the strategy seems to work well enough that it has persisted across many millions of years. That is the test of a strategy in nature. Not whether it is clever, but whether it works long enough to be passed on. Some caterpillars are covered in bristles or spines that look soft but can irritate the skin or mouth of anything that tries to eat them. Others produce a foul taste or smell when disturbed. Others, and this is one of my favorite details in all of butterfly biology, produce silk. Not in the dramatic quantities of a silk moth, but enough to anchor themselves to a surface or to create a shelter by folding a leaf around themselves and binding it shut with silk threads. A caterpillar curled inside a folded leaf, sheltered by its own careful construction, eating and growing in peace. There is something almost cozy about that, in the way that very small, safe places can feel cozy even when you are imagining them from the outside. The chrysalis itself is a structure worth pausing over. Unlike a moth's cocoon, which is spun from silk and built around the outside of the pupa, a butterfly's chrysalis is formed from the caterpillar's own transformed outer skin. The last shed, hardened and reshaped into a case that houses the transformation within. Many chrysalises are green or brown, matching the color of the leaves or stems they hang from. But some are remarkable. The chrysalis of the golden pupa butterfly, for instance, has patches that gleam like actual gold or silver. Not metaphorically, genuinely metallic looking, as if someone pressed thin foil against it. The effect is produced by layers of tissue that reflect light in a very specific way. It is structural optics again. The same principle at work in the wing scales, here deployed on the outside of a sealed and resting pupa, hanging quietly in a hedge somewhere in the warm afternoon light. Why this evolved? Whether the metallic gleam confuses predators, or dazzles them, or does something else entirely we have not yet understood, is not fully clear. There are things in biology that remain, for now, honestly uncertain. And I find I do not mind that. When a butterfly is ready to emerge from its chrysalis, the process is relatively quick compared to the long stillness that preceded it. The chrysalis becomes transparent near the end, the colors of the wing inside visible through the thinning wall. A kind of preview, a soft announcement that something is about to happen. The butterfly pushes out through a split in the casing, and in those first moments after emergence, its wings are wet and crumpled, folded against its body like a letter inside an envelope. The butterfly hangs and pumps fluid through the wing veins, a process called expansion. And slowly, very slowly, the wings unfurl and flatten, and dry in the open air. The whole process takes perhaps an hour or two in many species, and during that time, the butterfly is vulnerable. It cannot fly. Its wings are still soft. It clings to whatever surface is nearest and waits, with what I can only describe as patience, for the moment it will be ready. The wings of a butterfly, once expanded and dried, are among the most structurally complex surfaces found in the natural world at that scale. They are not solid. They are thin membranes, supported by a network of veins that carry both fluid and air and provide structural rigidity without adding much weight. The venation pattern, the specific arrangement of those supporting veins, is so consistent within a species and so distinctive between species that scientists can often identify a butterfly from wing venation alone, even without the color patterns. It is like a fingerprint, but written across the whole wing in a language of branching lines that has been slowly refined over tens of millions of years. Butterfly wings move in flight in a way that is more complex than the simple flapping of a bird's wings. The motion involves a twisting, clapping, peeling action that is difficult to describe and only visible in slow-motion footage. When two wings clap together at the top of a stroke, they create a jet of air that contributes to the forward thrust of the next downstroke. This mechanism, called a clap and fling, is used by many small flying insects and generates lift in ways that standard aerodynamic models, developed primarily for aircraft, did not initially predict or explain. Butterflies, in this sense, fly in ways that were once considered theoretically difficult, and they have been doing it for millions of years, without any awareness of how quietly impressive that is. The monarch butterfly migration is one of the most written about phenomena in all of butterfly science, and it deserves that attention, but perhaps not for the reasons we most often emphasize. We tend to focus on the distance. Monarchs traveling up to 3,000 miles from their summer breeding grounds in Canada and the northern United States to their overwintering sites in the Oyamal fir forests of central Mexico. And yes, the distance is worth pausing on. 3,000 miles on wings that weigh almost nothing, without GPS, without maps, without anyone who has made the journey before to show the way. Because the monarchs that migrate south in the autumn are not the same monarchs that came north in the spring. They are the great-grandchildren of those spring butterflies, perhaps the third or fourth generation down, and yet they know the way. They navigate using a combination of the sun's position in the sky and a time-compensated internal clock, adjusting their angle of flight through the day as the sun moves. They use the Earth's magnetic field as a backup compass. They read the polarization of light and navigate by cues that human senses cannot detect at all. The knowledge is in them before they are born, encoded, patient, waiting. When the monarchs arrive at those fir forests in Mexico, they gather in numbers that are difficult to hold in the mind. Millions of butterflies covering the trees, weighing down the branches, so numerous that the forest floor beneath them is carpeted in wings. In the colder mornings, they cluster close and still. As the day warms, they begin to open their wings, slowly, then all at once, and the sound of millions of wings, has been described by people who have stood in that forest as something like light rain, or the rustle of a great and living curtain, or simply as a sound they did not have a word for before they heard it. The local people of that region have known about the monarchs for generations. Some traditions hold that the butterflies are the returning souls of the dead, arriving each autumn around the Day of the Dead, on a schedule so reliable that it is easy to understand why the story took hold. Whether the monarchs are souls or not is not a question science can answer, but the timing is real. The arrival is real. The forest full of wings is very, very real. The population of monarch butterflies has declined significantly over the past several decades. Estimates suggest the population has fallen by more than 80% since the 1980s. The causes are multiple and interacting. Habitat loss along the migration route, the decline of milkweed as farmland is treated with herbicides, climate change altering the timing and conditions of the migration, illegal logging in the Mexican forests where they overwinter. Each cause is significant on its own. Together, they constitute a pressure that the monarch is still bearing. There is genuine effort to help. People planting milkweed in gardens and along roadsides, conservation programs protecting the overwintering forests, citizen science networks tracking the migration's progress each year. Whether it will be enough is a question that sits quietly in the background of everything written about monarchs now. A question that has no clean answer yet, and perhaps will not for some time. I find it worth sitting with, not to feel despair, but because paying attention to things is the beginning of caring for them. Not all butterflies migrate, of course. Most do not. Many species live their entire adult lives within a relatively small territory, a meadow, a hedgerow, a particular stretch of forest edge. The small tortoiseshell butterfly in Europe and Asia, for instance, is not a great traveler. It overwinters as an adult, finding shelter in hollow trees, caves, attics, garden sheds, anywhere that is cool and dry and safe enough to sleep through winter in. If you have ever found a small tortoiseshell butterfly resting quietly in your shed in January, seemingly dead but not dead, just still, just waiting, you have encountered this strategy firsthand. They do not freeze. They enter a state of torpor. Metabolic processes slowed, the body doing the absolute minimum necessary to remain alive until the warmth returns. It is a kind of practiced patience that I find genuinely moving. The willingness to become almost nothing for as long as it takes, trusting that spring will come, because spring has always come. The painted lady butterfly, Vanessa cardui, is arguably the most widespread butterfly species in the world, found on every continent except Antarctica and South America. It undertakes a migration that was only recently documented in its full extent, a multi-generational journey from sub-Saharan Africa northward across the Sahara Desert, into Europe, and potentially as far as the Arctic Circle, before a return journey south that covers perhaps 9,000 miles in total. For years, researchers had only fragmentary evidence of this migration, because the painted lady is so common, and its movement so gradual. that it was easy to assume different populations were simply residents of their regions, going nowhere. It took chemical analysis, examining the hydrogen isotope signature in wing scales, which reflects the water drunk during the caterpillar stage, which in turn reflects the latitude where the caterpillar lived, to trace the journey properly. The wings carried the story of the journey written into their chemistry, quietly, the whole time, in a language we could only recently read. Butterfly vision is profoundly different from human vision, and worth spending a few quiet moments thinking about. We see color in 3 channels: red, green, and blue. And from the combinations of those 3 channels, we perceive all the colors we are capable of seeing. Butterflies, depending on the species, can have 5, 6, or even more different color receptors. They can see into the ultraviolet range, wavelengths of light that are invisible to human eyes entirely. In ultraviolet, many butterfly wings display patterns that are completely invisible to us. Patterns used for species recognition, for signaling readiness to mate, for purposes that we are still working to understand. A meadow full of butterflies, viewed in ultraviolet, would look like a completely different meadow, full of signals and markings and messages that the butterflies are reading constantly, in a spectrum of communication that has been happening right alongside us, unseen, for as long as there have been butterflies, and people standing in meadows looking at them. Some butterfly species also have photoreceptors in unexpected places, not just in the compound eyes, but in the genitalia, which sounds odd until you consider that mating in many species involves precise alignment in dim conditions, and light sensing in that region may help ensure correct pairing. Nature, as I have mentioned, is almost never doing just one thing at a time, and it is almost never being unnecessarily squeamish about where it puts its solutions. The compound eyes of a butterfly, like those of most insects, do not produce a single focused image the way our eyes do. Instead, each of the thousands of facets in the compound eye captures a small portion of the visual field, and the brain assembles these into a mosaic image. Lower resolution than ours in some ways, but with a wider field of view, and a much greater sensitivity to movement. A butterfly can detect motion in almost every direction simultaneously: above, below, behind, beside, which makes it extraordinarily difficult to sneak up on one, as anyone who has tried to approach a butterfly in a garden and had it flutter away the instant they got close will attest. The butterfly is not particularly interested in you. It detected your approach long before you thought it had noticed you, and it left at the moment it judged necessary, not out of shyness, but out of a very old and well-calibrated sense of what warrants moving. Butterflies taste with their feet, as I mentioned when we talked about egg-laying, but the feeding habits of adult butterflies are worth a little more attention. Most adult butterflies feed primarily on nectar, the sweet, sugar-rich liquid produced by flowering plants, drawn up through a long, coiled proboscis that unfurls like a party favor when the butterfly lands on a flower. When not in use, the proboscis is coiled beneath the butterfly's head, invisible and compact, a tool folded away until needed. The image of this, a butterfly uncoiling a long drinking straw from beneath its own face. To drink from a flower is one of those details that is slightly ridiculous and entirely wonderful at the same time. It seems too whimsical to be true, and yet here we are. Not all butterflies drink only nectar, though. Some species also drink from rotting fruit, attracted to the fermenting sugars, in the same way that fruit flies are, though the scale is somewhat different. Others drink from animal dung, from carrion, from the mineral-rich moisture of damp soil or sand in a behavior called puddling, where butterflies gather in groups at muddy puddles to drink and extract sodium and amino acids that nectar alone does not provide. A gathering of butterflies around a puddle is one of the more quietly lovely things you can witness in a warm and otherwise unremarkable afternoon. And it has a name, a puddle club, informally, which is the most charming name I can think of for anything in nature. The relationship between butterflies and flowering plants is one of the defining stories of life on Earth, though it is told quietly and without fanfare. Flowering plants, angiosperms, evolved in part alongside the insects that pollinate them, and butterflies are among those pollinators. When a butterfly visits a flower to drink nectar, it picks up pollen on its body, on its legs, on its proboscis, on its underside, and carries that pollen to the next flower it visits, completing the plant's reproductive cycle, in the process of completing its own meal. This exchange, nectar for pollination, has been negotiated over millions of years, without any party ever sitting down to discuss the terms. The flower evolved its nectar to attract the butterfly. The butterfly evolved its proboscis to reach the nectar. Each shaped the other's evolution, slowly, incrementally, over timescales that dwarf everything human history has produced. And the result, seen from above on a warm afternoon, is simply a butterfly visiting a flower. Simple, ordinary, the product of an almost incomprehensible depth of time. Many butterfly species are what ecologists call specialist pollinators, meaning they preferentially visit a relatively narrow range of plant species, often strongly associated with specific flower colors or shapes. Butterflies tend to be attracted to flowers that are red, orange, yellow, and pink, colors that stand out against green foliage, in the visual spectrum that butterflies perceive most sharply. Some flowers have evolved nectar guides, patterns of lines and dots on their petals that in ultraviolet light form a kind of runway, pointing toward the nectar source, visible to bees and butterflies, but invisible to us, unless we use special photography. The flower is not advertising to humans. It never was. It is advertising to the animals it needs, in the frequency those animals can see, with a precision refined over millions of years of successful and unsuccessful advertisement. There are butterfly species that have evolved no dependence on flowering plants at all, or very little. The harvester butterfly, one of the few carnivorous butterflies in the world, feeds not on nectar, but on the honeydew secreted by woolly aphids, and its caterpillars eat the aphids themselves. The harvester caterpillar has even been observed camouflaging itself with the woolly material from the aphid colony, essentially wearing a disguise made of its prey, to move through the colony undetected while it feeds. This detail sits, for me, somewhere between genuinely clever and slightly unsettling, the way many things in nature do, when you look at them carefully enough. The lifespan of an adult butterfly varies enormously by species. Some live only a few days in their adult form, emerging, mating, laying eggs, and then simply stopping, the biological work complete. Others live for months. The monarch, famously, can live 7 to 8 months in its migratory generation, the one that must survive the long journey and the overwintering. Most butterfly species fall somewhere between those extremes. A few weeks as an adult, just enough time to find a mate and complete the cycle. There is something quietly melancholy about a lifespan measured in days, a whole adult life, unfolding between one sunrise and the next, or the one after that. But there is also something that is not quite the opposite of melancholy but sits beside it, the idea that a brief life can be complete. That completion does not require duration. The courtship of butterflies is elaborate, species-specific, and, in many cases, involves a level of chemical communication that we are still working to fully understand. Males of many species produce pheromones, chemical signals, from specialized scales called androconia, which may be scattered across the wing surface or gathered into patches called hair pencils that the male actively brushes near the female during courtship. The courtship flight of many butterfly species, two butterflies spiraling upward together, or one pursuing the other in looping, dipping circles, is both a visual display and a chemical exchange, the female assessing the male's chemical signals, alongside his flight agility and wing condition. A male with frayed or damaged wings may be at a disadvantage, not simply because he looks worn, but because damaged wings affect his flight performance. And flight performance, in the calculus of butterfly courtship, matters. The female butterfly makes the final decision in most species. She can decline, and in some species, she has a specific posture she adopts to signal refusal. Wings folded, abdomen raised, a clear and unambiguous message. That is, one hopes, respected. The mating systems of butterflies are varied. Some species are monogamous within a season, some mate multiply, some have complex hierarchies among males that determine who gets the best territories. In some species, males stake out and defend patches of sunlight, specific spots where warmth and visibility attract females, and fight off rival males with aerial jousting, spiraling upward in contests, until one gives up and descends. The winner floats back down to his sunlit patch and waits, patient, as the light moves across the afternoon. The blue morpho butterfly of Central and South America is one of the largest butterflies in the world, with a wingspan that can reach up to 20 centimeters, roughly 8 inches, and a color so vivid and so pure that it seems almost artificial. That blue, a deep, electric, almost impossible blue, is entirely structural, produced not by any pigment, but by the precise microscopic architecture of its wing scales. Nanoscale ridges and layers on the scale surface scatter and interfere with light in a way that selectively amplifies blue wavelengths and cancels out others. The result is a color so saturated so pure that it shifts and shimmers as the angle of view changes, catching sunlight in the rainforest in a way that can be seen, reportedly, from 1/4 mile away. If you were standing in a Central American forest and a blue morpho passed you, a flash of that impossible blue between the trees, I think you would stop mid-step. I think most people do. Structural color. Color produced by physical structure rather than chemical pigment is one of the more remarkable phenomena in all of biology, and butterfly wings are among its finest expressions. The same mechanism is at work in the iridescent feathers of hummingbirds and peacocks, in the shells of certain beetles, in the eyes of the mantis shrimp. But butterflies, because their wing scales are so thin and so precisely arranged, achieve effects of particular complexity, colors that shift with angle, patterns that appear or disappear depending on how the light falls, a visual grammar that has inspired engineers and materials scientists, studying how to produce structural colors without pigments, for applications in screens, sensors, and anti-counterfeiting measures. The butterfly wing, built over 200 million years of gradual refinement, turns out to be a useful object to study when trying to design things for the 21st century. Time folds in on itself, in science, in the most ordinary and lovely ways. Some butterflies carry pigment-based colors as well, yellows and whites from flavonoids, blacks and browns from melanin, reds and oranges from pigments derived from the plants the caterpillar ate. In fact, the specific shade of some butterflies' orange or red can vary depending on which plants were available to the caterpillar. A butterfly whose larva ate plants rich in certain compounds will be a slightly different shade from one whose larva ate less well. The wing carries, in a quiet and indelible way, the record of what the caterpillar ate, a whole life's beginning, written in color, spread across the wing, for anyone who knows how to read it. The underside of a butterfly's wing is often a completely different pattern from the upper side, and in many species, the underside is dull, cryptic, designed to disappear. When a butterfly rests with wings folded, showing only the undersides, it can become nearly invisible against bark, leaves, stone, or dead vegetation. The comma butterfly, named for the tiny white punctuation mark on its underwing, has an underside so perfectly resembling a dead leaf that it was reportedly described by a naturalist who first encountered it resting in autumn debris as looking like a leaf torn from a book. The beautiful, vivid upper wing, the side the butterfly shows when flying, when displaying, when being seen, and the cryptic, dull, hidden underside, the side it shows when it wants to disappear. Two identities on one animal, two different answers to the question of what it is, depending on who is asking, and what the butterfly needs in that moment. The leaf butterfly, genus Calima, takes this to an almost theatrical extreme. When the Calima butterfly rests with wings closed, it becomes so convincingly a dead leaf that even experienced naturalists have walked past them in the forest without noticing. The wing veins align with the midrib of a leaf. The colors shift from brown to tan to gray, mimicking the gradations of decay. Some individuals even have small spots, that mimic the holes and blemishes found on real dead leaves. To be that still, that convincingly other than what you are, I am not sure whether it is a disguise or simply a truth, that the butterfly exists in two truths at once and chooses which to show. Butterfly populations fluctuate naturally with the seasons, with the weather, with the availability of their host plants. A cold, wet spring can devastate a generation. A warm, early summer can allow a population to boom. Naturalists in Britain and Europe have kept detailed records of butterfly populations, going back over a century, records that now form an invaluable dataset, showing not just the ups and downs of individual species, but longer trends that reveal the effects of land use change, climate, and habitat quality over time. In the United Kingdom, a country with relatively good historical data, more than 3/4 of butterfly species have declined in population, distribution, or both over the past 50 years. That figure has a weight to it that I think deserves to be felt quietly before moving on. Not in alarm, not in despair, but felt. Some butterfly species have fared better than others, or have adapted in ways that are worth noting. Not as a false comfort, but because the picture is genuinely complex. The large white butterfly, the common cabbage white, has thrived alongside human agriculture, its caterpillars eating the brassica plants that we grow in such quantities. It is, from the perspective of a farmer, a pest. From the perspective of a butterfly, it is a success story, a species that found a niche in a world remade by humans, and filled it so effectively that it is now present on every continent except Antarctica. The world looks very different depending on where you are standing in it and what you are trying to eat. The speckled wood butterfly has been expanding its range northward in Britain and Europe over recent decades, a documented response to warming temperatures that is letting it colonize habitats where it was previously unable to survive through winter. It is presented, in the literature, as evidence of species responding in real time to climate change, which it is. But I find myself also just sitting with the image of the butterfly itself, dappled brown and cream, preferring woodland edges and dappled shade, slowly over generations, moving north, following the warmth, finding shade in new forests, laying eggs on grass in clearings it has never reached before. Not knowing it is expanding its range, just living, just finding what it needs. There are butterfly species found in the Arctic, in tundra, in high mountain meadows, in habitats that most of us would not associate with anything as seemingly delicate as a butterfly. The Arctic fritillary and the Melissa Arctic butterfly survive at latitudes where the growing season is a few short weeks, where the temperature can drop below freezing even in midsummer nights, where the sunlight lasts most of the day, but the warmth it carries is thin and brief. These butterflies have adapted by compressing their life cycle, some taking 2 years to complete metamorphosis, the caterpillar overwintering frozen in the soil, and thawing in spring to continue eating, completing the cycle in a second warm season. Frozen, thawed, alive again, continuing. There is a kind of stubborn, uncomplaining persistence in that I find it difficult not to admire, even knowing the butterfly has no awareness of it. Butterflies are ectotherms, cold-blooded in the common parlance, which means they cannot generate body heat internally, the way mammals and birds do. They depend on external heat sources, primarily sunlight, to warm their muscles to the temperature needed for flight. This is why you will often see butterflies basking on warm surfaces. A sun-warmed stone, a flat leaf, the pavement of a garden path, with wings spread wide, angled toward the sun. They are solar panels, in the simplest sense, collecting warmth before they can move. On a cold morning, a butterfly that would normally be capable of rapid, agile flight may be sluggish and almost entirely stationary, unable to fly until it has absorbed enough heat from the sun's first rays. This window, those minutes of warming, of stillness before flight, is when they are most vulnerable. And it is also, I think, one of the more quietly beautiful things to witness. A butterfly waiting for warmth, patient and open, trusting that it will come. The behavior called thermoregulation in butterflies involves more than just basking. Many species can adjust their body temperature by changing their posture relative to the sun, turning perpendicular to the sun's rays to maximize warmth, or turning parallel to them to minimize it when they overheat. In very hot conditions, some butterflies will seek shade or adopt a posture called stilting, raising the body on straightened legs to create a small gap between the surface and the abdomen, allowing a little airflow where there would otherwise be none. It is, in its own way, a form of engineering, the butterfly solving a thermal problem, without any conscious knowledge that it is doing so. The solution is in the behavior, encoded somewhere deep in its neurology, inherited and reliable. The nervous system of a butterfly is, compared to ours, minimal. The brain, if we can call it that, without feeling we are being either generous or reductive, is a small cluster of ganglia, a knot of neural tissue that handles sensory processing, flight control, feeding, and mating. There is a great deal of debate among scientists about what it is like to be an insect, whether there is any subjective experience at all, any inner felt sense of what is happening, or whether the butterfly simply processes and responds without any accompanying experience of doing so. This is a question science cannot yet answer, and may never be able to answer fully, because the question of what has experience, what has something it is like to be, runs so deep into philosophy that even human consciousness remains, at its core, not fully explained. What I can say is this: a butterfly behaves as if things matter to it. Warmth and cold, safety and threat, the right leaf and the wrong one. Whether that is experience or mechanism, I genuinely do not know, and I find I am comfortable not knowing. The antennae of a butterfly serve multiple functions. They are sensors for smell, for touch, and, as I mentioned, for flight stabilization. Butterflies can detect a wide range of chemical compounds through their antennae, including the pheromones of potential mates, the volatile compounds released by plants, and perhaps even chemical cues left by other members of their species. The antenna tips, those clubbed ends, are particularly sensitive, and if you watch a butterfly exploring a flower or a leaf, you will often see it tap and probe with its antennae tips in a rapid, delicate, searching motion. It is reading the world through touch and chemistry simultaneously, a kind of sensory richness that is different from ours but not necessarily lesser. Just different, oriented toward different questions. Some species of butterfly have a remarkable relationship with ants, one that is, depending on the species, either a gentle partnership or a sustained deception. The large blue butterfly, once extinct in the United Kingdom and later reintroduced, has a caterpillar that in its early stages feeds on thyme flowers. But in its later stages, the caterpillar changes behavior entirely. It drops to the ground and produces chemical and acoustic signals that mimic those of ant larvae. Worker ants find it, assess it with their antennae, and, apparently convinced, carry it back to the ant nest. Once inside, the caterpillar is fed by the worker ants and may eat ant larvae itself, all while continuing to produce the chemical signals that prevent the ants from recognizing it as an intruder. It spends the rest of its larval life in the ant nest, warm, protected, fed, emerging as a butterfly and leaving, while the ants continue about their business, apparently none the wiser. The large blue caterpillar has been described, in the literature, as a social parasite, and that framing is accurate. But there is also something slightly wonderful in the audacity of it. The entire scheme, the chemicals, the sounds, the patience, the ant colony, enormous, organized, experienced, completely fooled by one small caterpillar that needs a warm place to grow. The reintroduction of the large blue butterfly to Britain is considered one of the more successful conservation stories in European entomology. It required not just breeding and releasing the butterfly, but understanding and recreating the very specific habitat it needed: short grass, wild thyme, and the specific ant species it depends on. All three in the right proportions, in the right place. It is a story that reveals something important about how ecosystems work. A species is not just an animal in a landscape. It is a knot of relationships with other species, with the soil, with the plants, with the insects that live in the same patch of ground. Remove any of those threads, and the knot comes loose. Restoring a species means restoring all those threads, one careful relationship at a time. Butterflies play roles in their ecosystems, beyond pollination that are easily overlooked. As caterpillars, they are an important food source for birds, parasitic wasps, beetles, and many other predators. In some habitats, caterpillars are a significant component of the diet of nesting birds, particularly insectivorous species like warblers and tits, which time their reproduction to coincide with the peak abundance of caterpillars in spring and early summer. The relationship is so finely tuned that even small shifts in the timing of spring leaf emergence, driven by warming temperatures, can misalign the caterpillar peak with the nesting window, reducing the food available to chicks at the moment they need it most. This kind of timing mismatch, called phenological mismatch, is one of the subtler and more troubling effects of rapid climate change on ecosystems. Not dramatic collapse, but a slow unsynchronizing of relationships that have been calibrated over thousands of years. The eggs of many butterfly species are parasitized by tiny wasps, chalcid and trichogramma wasps, smaller than a grain of sand, which lay their own eggs inside the butterfly egg, their larvae developing and feeding within it, before the butterfly larva can complete its own development. From the butterfly's perspective, this is a significant and constant threat. From the ecosystem's perspective, it is a population control mechanism, keeping caterpillar populations from growing unchecked. From the perspective of the wasp, if we can imagine it, the butterfly egg is simply a warm and safe and well-provisioned place to grow. Perspective, in ecology, as in most things, changes everything. The eye spot markings found on many butterfly wings are one of the more studied and debated features in butterfly science. They are exactly what they sound like. Large, roughly circular markings on the wing that bear a resemblance to an eye, often with a dark pupil-like center and a pale or brightly colored iris-like ring. The function of these markings is not fully settled. Some research suggests they deter predators, that a bird, startled by the sudden appearance of large eye-like markings on a wing it was about to strike, hesitates long enough for the butterfly to escape. Other research suggests they deflect attacks toward the wing edges. A bird pecks at the eye spot, takes a bit of wing instead of the butterfly's body, and the butterfly escapes with a torn wing, but an intact thorax and abdomen. Both functions may operate simultaneously in different contexts, which is typical of the way nature refuses to give clean, single-purpose answers to questions we have been asking for centuries. Some butterflies use their eye spots in active displays, flashing them deliberately at a predator by suddenly spreading wings that were previously folded and camouflaged. The sudden appearance of what looks like two large eyes in a place that a moment ago appeared to be nothing is, apparently, alarming enough to cause some predators to flinch and retreat. The butterfly uses the half-second of hesitation to fly. The whole interaction, the predator's approach, the display, the flinch, the escape, happens so quickly that without slow-motion cameras, it is very difficult to observe cleanly. But it happens, constantly, in gardens and forests everywhere, all day long, largely unobserved. One of the genuinely moving things about butterfly science is how much of it has been contributed by amateur naturalists. The tradition of the butterfly collector, a tradition now more often carried out with camera than net, has generated enormous amounts of distributional data, life cycle observations, and behavioral notes that form the backbone of what we now know about many species. In Victorian England, butterfly collecting was pursued with an intensity that seems almost obsessive by modern standards. The desire to pin and label and possess every species, every variant, every rare form. The collections made in that era, now housed in natural history museums around the world, are scientifically invaluable. They contain specimens from habitats that no longer exist, of populations that have since disappeared, of color forms and geographic variants that can now only be studied behind glass in a drawer. There is a melancholy in that. The pinned butterfly has the only record of something that flew once in a meadow that is now a car park, or a housing estate, or an agricultural field. But the record is there. It survives. And the people who made those collections, however we feel about the method, were paying very close attention to the world they were in, which is never a small thing. The first written description of a butterfly in a European scientific context is generally attributed to work from the late 1500s and 1600s, though people had of course observed and depicted butterflies long before. Systematic natural history began. Butterflies appear in ancient Egyptian art, in Greek and Roman poetry, in medieval illuminated manuscripts. Small, colorful, often appearing in the margins, as if the illustrator could not resist adding them, even when they were not strictly required. The Greek word for butterfly, psyche, is the same word as the word for soul, and this was not accidental. The transformation from caterpillar to butterfly, from something earthbound and eating, to something winged and free, seemed to ancient observers like a living allegory for what they most deeply hoped was true about what comes after death. The butterfly as soul, the wing as proof of survival, the whole field and meadow, suddenly full of small, wandering spirits, in August sunlight. The Chinese tradition holds a similar resonance. The philosopher Zhuangzi, in the 4th century before the Common Era, wrote what is perhaps the most famous butterfly reflection in philosophical literature. A dream in which he was a butterfly, fluttering freely, unaware of being Zhuangzi, and upon waking wondered whether he was Zhuangzi who had dreamed of being a butterfly, or whether he was a butterfly now dreaming of being Zhuangzi. The uncertainty at the center of that question, the uncertain boundary between self and not self, between waking and dreaming, between the creature we are and the creature we imagine, has been sitting in the world for nearly 2,400 years and has not been resolved. Butterfly dreams, human waking, the border between them, softly argued over and never settled. In Japanese art and culture, butterflies have carried symbolic weight for centuries, associated with transformation, with the souls of the departed, and also with feminine beauty and the evanescent nature of joy. The Japanese word for butterfly, chocho, appears in poetry, in the names of geisha, in Puccini's opera, borrowed, like so many beautiful things, across cultures and centuries, until it becomes difficult to say where it began. The image of the butterfly in Japanese aesthetic tradition is often paired with the concept of mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of impermanence, the beauty that is deepened by its brevity. A butterfly landing on a flower in autumn, beautiful because it will not last, beautiful because you know, while it is happening, that it will end. The English word butterfly has a contested etymology. Nobody is entirely certain where it comes from. The most common explanation is that it derives from the butter-colored yellow of the common brimstone butterfly, which was perhaps the most familiar species to those who coined the word in early medieval England. Another theory, more fanciful and harder to substantiate, suggests that the name comes from an old belief that witches transformed into butterflies in order to steal butter and milk from households. I have no idea whether that is true, and I suspect historians of language are not certain either. But I think it is worth allowing both explanations to coexist for a moment. The mundane one, about the color of a wing, and the magical one, about witches and milk. The world was explained differently once, more personally, more strangely, and there is something gently interesting in the fact that this small, fluttering creature seemed dangerous enough to require a name and a caution. The largest butterfly in the world is generally considered to be the Queen Alexandra's birdwing, found in Papua New Guinea, with a wingspan that can reach up to 28 centimeters, nearly 11 inches. In the largest females, it is so large that when it was first encountered by Western naturalists in the early 1900s, the initial specimen was reportedly shot down from the tree canopy with a shotgun because it could not be caught by any other means. This detail belongs, I think, in the category of quietly absurd historical facts. The image of someone raising a shotgun to collect a butterfly specimen is one that resists easy commentary and simply asks to be acknowledged. The Queen Alexandra's birdwing is now endangered, its forest habitat threatened by logging and the expansion of oil palm agriculture. It is protected by international law and cannot legally be collected at all. The shotgun, at least, has been retired. The smallest butterfly in the world is a matter of some debate, but strong candidates include the western pygmy blue of western North America, a butterfly with a wingspan of roughly 1 centimeter, perhaps a little less in the smallest individuals. 1 centimeter, about the width of a fingernail, a creature so small that it is easy to mistake for a mote of dust or a fleck of something blown from a flower, until you look more carefully and see that the mote has wings and is going somewhere and has a place it needs to be. The mountain ranges of the world, the Andes, the Himalayas, the Alps, the Rockies, are remarkable centers of butterfly diversity. The rapid changes in altitude create multiple different climatic zones in close proximity, each with its own plant communities, its own temperature range, its own conditions, and populations of butterflies that live in one altitude zone are often genetically isolated from populations of the same species, living just a few kilometers away at a different altitude. Over time, these isolated populations diverge, adapting slightly differently to slightly different conditions, and eventually become distinct species. The mountains, in this sense, are engines of speciation, their complexity generating diversity, the way a river generates tributaries. The Andes in particular are home to an extraordinary array of butterfly species, many of them found nowhere else on Earth, species that evolved in specific valleys or on specific slopes, and have existed in that one place and nowhere else for millions of years. The tropical rainforests of South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia contain the greatest butterfly diversity of any biomes on Earth. The Amazon basin alone is estimated to contain perhaps 1,500 to 2,000 species, a number that is difficult to know precisely, because new species continue to be described, and because the forest is so vast and so complex that even with extensive survey effort, some corners of it remain nearly unknown to science. A week of careful collecting in a well-chosen patch of Amazonian forest can yield dozens of species that were not expected to be there, and occasionally one or two that have never been formally described. The forest holds more than we have found. It is one of the few remaining places on Earth where that can honestly be said. The science of butterfly genetics has advanced enormously over the past few decades and has produced some genuinely remarkable insights. The genetic basis of wing pattern, how a butterfly's DNA encodes the specific colors and shapes on its wings, is a major area of research that touches on fundamental questions in developmental biology. It turns out that a relatively small number of genes, acting during a specific window in the pupal stage, determine the broad architecture of wing pattern, where the bands will be, where the eye spots will fall, how much of the wing will be which color. Tiny changes in the expression of these genes, when they are active, for how long, in which cells, can produce dramatic differences in wing appearance. The variation between butterfly species turns out to rest on a relatively narrow genetic foundation. A few key genes, turned up or down, earlier or later, producing the extraordinary diversity of patterns we see in the world's 17,000 species. Small changes, large differences. This seems to be a recurring theme in biology and in life more generally. Heliconius butterflies, a genus found across Central and South America, are famous among butterfly researchers for a phenomenon called mimicry rings. Groups of different species that share nearly identical warning color patterns and have apparently evolved toward those shared patterns independently. A predator that learns to avoid one species in the ring also avoids all the others. The education of the predator is shared across species that are not closely related, pooling their warning signals, the way a group of hikers might share safety information across a trail. The genetics underlying this convergence has been studied in remarkable detail, and it turns out that the same genes responsible for the patterns are involved in the mimicry across different species. The same molecular tools, repurposed independently, arriving at the same solution through different paths. Evolution, finding the same answer more than once, working with what it has, patient and unsentimental. Gynandromorphs, butterflies that are partly male and partly female, occur very rarely in the wild and are among the most visually striking natural anomalies you are likely to encounter in an entomological collection. In some species, the male and female have dramatically different wing patterns, and a bilateral gynandromorph, where one half of the butterfly is male and the other half is female, can have two completely different wing patterns, divided precisely down the body's midline. Half blue, half brown, half patterned one way, half patterned another. A creature that is, in a biological sense, genuinely both things at once. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, but chromosomally, structurally, in every cell of its body split precisely by the boundary of its symmetry. These individuals do not survive as well as typical butterflies. The mismatch of systems creates difficulties. But when they are found, they are extraordinary documents of the way the genome can sometimes double back on itself, producing something that does not fit any simple category. Butterfly sound is something most people do not think about, because butterflies are, for the most part, silent creatures, or rather, creatures whose sounds are largely inaudible to us. But some species do produce sounds, clicks, and crackling noises made by the wings during flight, and in some cases by specialized structures on the body that produce vibrations. The cracker butterfly, genus Hamadryas, is named for the audible crackling sound it makes in flight, produced by a mechanism that is still not entirely understood, but appears to involve a structure on the forewing that snaps or clicks as the wing moves. These sounds may play a role in territorial interactions between males, or in startling predators, or in communication during courtship. The forest is, it turns out, a place full of messages being sent, in frequencies and forms we are only beginning to hear. Caterpillars produce sounds too, mostly in the ultrasonic range, beyond human hearing. Some species vibrate their bodies against the surface they rest on, sending signals through the substrate, through the leaf, through the branch, through the plant, in ways that may communicate distress or coordinate group behavior. The caterpillars of some species live gregariously, in clusters, on the same branch or plant, and it has been suggested that their substrate-borne vibrations may help synchronize their feeding behavior or warn each other of danger. Whether this constitutes communication in any meaningful sense is a question of definition as much as science. But the vibrations are real. The substrate carries them. Something, somewhere in the caterpillar cluster, may be listening. The immune system of caterpillars is robust enough to allow them to encapsulate and neutralize many of the parasitic wasp eggs that are laid inside them. This immune response is not always successful. Parasites have evolved sophisticated countermeasures, including venoms and secretions, that suppress the caterpillar's immune system long enough for the wasp larva to establish itself. It is an arms race that has been running for tens of millions of years. Caterpillar immunity improving, parasite countermeasures improving, back and forth, in slow increments across geological time. No resolution, no victor, just two strategies, evolving alongside each other indefinitely. The word for this kind of relationship is coevolution, a word that sounds dry, but describes something that is, at its core, a very long and very consequential conversation, with no ending in sight. The question of how butterflies navigate using the Earth's magnetic field is one that is still being actively researched. What we know is that monarchs, at least, appear to have magnetite crystals in their bodies, tiny structures that are sensitive to magnetic fields, and that could, in principle, provide the animal with information about its orientation relative to magnetic north. How this information is integrated with the solar compass, and how the butterfly uses it in the real complexity of migration. Mountains in the way, storms deflecting the route, days when the sun is hidden, is not yet fully understood. The navigational system of the monarch, it seems, is redundant in the way that good navigation systems are. Multiple inputs, multiple checks, the animal triangulating its position from sources of information that it inherited and cannot explain. We have this too, in a sense, an accumulated sense of where we are in a space we know well, a feeling of direction built from countless small cues. But the monarch does it across 3,000 miles of unfamiliar territory, on its first attempt, without anyone to follow. The role of learning in butterfly behavior is a growing area of research. We have already mentioned the evidence that caterpillars can form memories that survive metamorphosis. But adult butterflies also appear capable of some forms of learning, particularly in the context of foraging. A butterfly that has repeatedly encountered a rewarding flower species will begin to preferentially search for that species, improving its foraging efficiency through experience. This is a relatively simple form of learning, association between stimulus and reward, but it is learning nonetheless. It suggests that the butterfly's interaction with its environment is not purely fixed and instinctual, that there is some capacity, however modest, to update behavior based on experience, to encounter the world and be changed by it, even a little. There is a species of butterfly, the Bhutan glory, that was known from only a handful of specimens, collected in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and was then not reliably observed again for many decades. For a period, it was feared to be extinct, and then, in a way that butterfly stories sometimes do, it was found again. Not extinct, simply rare, simply in a forest that very few people had looked in carefully enough. There is something in this that I find genuinely comforting, even though I know it does not always end this way. The idea that something can be not found for a century, and then simply be there, still going about its life, indifferent to whether anyone had seen it lately. Still there, still flying. Butterfly wings, once removed from the body and properly preserved, can last for extraordinarily long times. Museum specimens collected in the mid-1800s are still in good enough condition to yield genetic material, to measure for wing length and pattern, to compare with modern populations. In some cases, the color of a wing specimen preserved for 150 years is barely changed, because structural colors, produced by physical structure rather than chemical pigment, do not fade the way pigment does. A blue morpho wing from 1870 is as blue today as it was the day it was collected. The nanostructures are still intact. The physics still works. The light still scatters the same way. Time moves differently for structure than for color. It moves differently still for wings than for the things that wore them. The relationship between butterflies and the plants they feed on is so tightly wound, in some cases, that the disappearance of the plant leads quickly to the disappearance of the butterfly. This is called host-plant dependency, And it means that a butterfly's survival is ultimately tied to the survival of a specific set of plant species. Sometimes just one. When habitats change, when grasslands are converted to cropland, when hedgerows are removed, when specific wildflowers are no longer present because the conditions that supported them have shifted, the butterfly that depended on those plants has nowhere to go. It is not simply that the habitat has been altered. It is that a specific and necessary relationship has been severed. The caterpillar needs the leaf of one plant, and that plant is gone, and no other plant will do. Specificity, which is an evolutionary strength over long, stable timescales, becomes a vulnerability when things change quickly. The habitat of the marsh fritillary butterfly in Britain is a good illustration of this. The marsh fritillary caterpillar feeds almost exclusively on devil's bit scabious, a wild flower of damp, unimproved grassland. As traditional farming practices changed, as wet meadows were drained and improved, as the kind of rough, boggy, untidy grassland that supported scabious became rare, the marsh fritillary declined. It is now largely confined to nature reserves and carefully managed sites, where the right conditions are maintained deliberately. People cutting grass at the right time of year, or grazing livestock at the right density, to keep the habitat in a state that a butterfly evolved to need over thousands of years of a slower world. There is something both hopeful and a little sad in that. The butterfly surviving because people chose to keep a rough corner of a meadow rough, to leave a boggy patch undrained, to cut hay late instead of early. Small choices, quiet choices, choices that a butterfly has no way to know are being made on its behalf. The science of citizen science. The involvement of non-professional volunteers in scientific data collection has been particularly fruitful for butterfly research. Programs like the United Kingdom Butterfly Monitoring Scheme, which has been running since 1976, involve trained volunteers walking fixed transects and counting every butterfly they see, week after week, year after year. The dataset produced by 50 years of this work is one of the most comprehensive long-term biodiversity records in the world. It documents population trends across dozens of species simultaneously, revealing patterns that would have been invisible to any individual researcher looking at any single site. 50 years of people walking the same paths, counting the same wings, building one summer afternoon at a time, a picture of what is happening to butterflies in Britain. It is one of the more quietly beautiful scientific enterprises I know of. The act of watching butterflies, not counting them, not collecting them, just watching, has been shown in some research to have measurable benefits for psychological well-being. The gentle focus required, the slow approach, the stillness, the patient attention to something small and quick, appears to activate something restorative in the nervous system, something related to the calming effect of nature more broadly, but perhaps heightened by the specific challenge of tracking something so delicate and so briefly still. There is a long tradition, in Japan, in China, in Europe, of finding peace in small and living things, of the garden as a place of contemplation, of the butterfly as an object of slow attention. that requires you to set down your other concerns and simply look. There is science in this now, measures and controls and effect sizes. But the practice is older than science and quieter than any study. It is worth noting, before we move too far toward the end of tonight, that butterflies have been used in medicine, not always effectively, not always gently, across many cultures and many centuries. In traditional Chinese medicine, various butterfly and moth preparations appeared in compendiums going back over 1,000 years. In European folk medicine of the medieval period, butterflies were thought to carry protective or healing properties that now strike us as improbable at best. What is interesting, from a modern perspective, is not whether these remedies worked. They mostly did not, in any pharmacological sense, but what they reveal about the symbolic weight that butterflies carried. An animal associated with transformation, with the soul, with the passage between states of being. Of course, it would be used medicinally. Of course, people would try to borrow its power. People have always tried to borrow the power of things they found beautiful and only partially understood. The butterfly effect, the concept from chaos theory, that a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil could in principle cause a tornado in Texas, was coined by the meteorologist Edward Lorenz, who used the butterfly as an image to illustrate the sensitivity of complex systems to initial conditions. He chose the butterfly, apparently somewhat arbitrarily. The point was the smallness of the disturbance, not any particular property of butterflies, but the image took hold in culture in a way that a seagull or a grain of sand might not have done. The butterfly carries something in its image, in its associations, that makes it the right vehicle for certain ideas. The idea that small things matter, that delicate things have reach, that the world is more connected, more sensitive, more responsive to tiny perturbations than our ordinary experience suggests. The chaos theory butterfly is, of course, metaphorical. No actual butterfly controls the weather. But actual butterflies do, in their small ways, participate in the systems that shape the world. They pollinate. They feed predators. They are fed upon by parasites that are fed upon by others. They carry pollen across hillsides. Their caterpillars aerate the leaf litter as they move through it. Their chrysalises, hanging in hedges and under eaves, are part of the texture of the landscape in ways we rarely consider. The world with butterflies in it is a different world from the world without them. Not dramatically, perhaps not even noticeably at first, but genuinely, measurably, in ways that would eventually be felt. There are researchers who spend their entire careers studying a single genus or even a single species of butterfly, and who will tell you, after decades of work, that they have not run out of questions. Every year, something is found, a new behavioral observation, a new genetic finding, a new population responding in an unexpected way to a change in its environment that requires updating the understanding that had seemed, until that moment, fairly solid. Science, in this respect, is very like a butterfly. always moving, never quite where you thought it was, occasionally settling long enough to be seen clearly, before lifting away again, toward something else. The wing scales of butterfly species have become a model system for understanding developmental genetics, how a genome produces a specific pattern in a specific place at a specific time. The nymphalid ground plan, a theoretical model of wing pattern developed in the 1980s by the researcher H. Frederick Nijhout, proposed that the complex diversity of butterfly wing patterns could be understood as variations on a single underlying template, with different elements of the template emphasized or suppressed in different ways in different species. This was a conceptual breakthrough, the idea that behind the enormous variety of wing patterns, there was a deeper unity, a shared grammar being expressed in different dialects. The subsequent genetic work has largely supported this view and has given researchers tools to understand how new patterns evolve and what happens at the molecular level when a butterfly's appearance changes across generations. It is the kind of unifying idea that makes a field of science suddenly feel coherent, all the variety resolving, briefly, into a recognizable structure, like a large piece of music resolving to a chord before expanding out again. Butterflies in the family Lycaenidae, the blues, coppers, and hair streaks, are among the most diverse and most studied of all butterfly groups. Many lycaenids have the complex ant relationships I described earlier, partnerships and parasitisms that make them extraordinary subjects for the study of coevolution and interspecies interaction. The hairstreak butterflies have, in many species, a distinctive set of markings on the underside of the hindwing, thin lines and spots that together create the appearance of a false head, a false eye, false antennae made of thin tails, a coloration that draws the eye toward the hindwing tip and away from the actual head. Birds that strike the false head instead of the real one lose their grip on a torn corner of wing, while the butterfly escapes more or less intact. Some hairstreak species even move the false head end of the wing in small, deliberate circular motions when they are resting, as if the fake antennae were twitching, making the illusion more convincing to any observer. It is theater, very slow, very quiet, entirely unconscious theater, performed continuously for an audience of predators that are, for the most part, fooled. There is a species of butterfly called the dead leaf butterfly, and a species called the map butterfly, and a species called the question mark butterfly, named for the silver punctuation on its underwing, and a species called the morning cloak, for its deep maroon wings edged with pale yellow, like a Victorian widow's dress. The names people have given butterflies, the common names, the ones that came before the Latin, often carry in them a whole world of observation and feeling. Someone looked at the morning cloak butterfly and saw grief in its colors. Someone looked at the question mark and saw punctuation in silver. Someone looked at a species with a map-like pattern of lines on its wing and thought, yes, that is what this is. These are small acts of poetry embedded in science. The naturalist has someone who not only observes, but reaches for the language that captures what the observation felt like. The comma butterfly, which I mentioned earlier for its dead leaf underside, takes its name from that small white marking on the underwing, a single curved white line, exactly the size and shape of a typographical comma. The person who named it, or the people, over centuries, whose usage settled into the name, saw a piece of language written on a wing, and named the wing after the language. I find this gently moving, in a way that is hard to explain. The comma butterfly, as if the wing is pausing, mid-sentence, before continuing with something. The brimstone butterfly, believed by many to be the origin of the word butterfly, is one of the earliest butterflies to appear in spring in Britain and Northern Europe, emerging from overwintering in late winter or early spring, on the first warm days. The male brimstone is a pure, bright yellow, the yellow of butter, the yellow of new primroses, the yellow that appears in the hedgerow, before almost anything else has colour. To see a brimstone in late February or early March, a mild day, the air still cold but the sun strong, is to feel something shift in the year. The butterfly is the announcement that the shift is happening, not a metaphor for spring. Actually spring, becoming available to see. The red admiral butterfly has a particular quality of appearing at unexpected moments. In gardens in autumn, feeding on the last of the ivy flowers or the fallen, fermenting windfall apples, its wings vivid against the browns and yellows of the season. It is a butterfly that migrates. British and Northern European populations are partially sustained by migrants from Southern Europe and North Africa, and partially resident, with some individuals attempting to overwinter in Britain. Its appearance in October and November, feeding in the cold afternoon light, always feels slightly improbable. A vivid, warm-colored thing, persisting into the cold. People often stop when they see one. Something in the brightness of it catches the eye and holds it for a moment before the butterfly moves on and the afternoon continues. The painted lady, the species that undertakes that extraordinary global migration, appears in the British countryside in waves, some years common and some years rare, depending on conditions far to the south. In good painted lady years, the countryside can seem full of them, hillsides covered, thistles loaded with feeding adults, the fields looking, from a distance, as if they have developed a new kind of pale orange flower that trembles and lifts and lands and lifts again. And then, as autumn comes, they are gone, not died, or not all of them, but left, moving south, high in the air on winds that carry them faster than they could fly alone, back toward Africa, back toward warmth, guided by the same ancient knowledge that brought their parents north. The fields look ordinary again. The thistles hold only seeds now, and the wind moves through them, as if nothing has been. Butterflies cannot survive without flowering plants, and flowering plants cannot thrive without pollinators, and the world we depend on for food cannot sustain itself without healthy populations of both. This is not alarmism. It is simply a description of how things are connected. The butterfly is not separate from the world. It is one of the threads the world is woven from. And, like all threads, it is easier to remove than to replace, and the fabric shifts in ways that are hard to predict until the thread is gone. Paying attention to butterflies, their populations, their habitats, the plants they need and the plants that need them, is not a small or sentimental thing. It is one of the more direct ways of paying attention to the health of the world. And yet, and I want to hold both of these things, there is also value in watching a butterfly, for no reason other than that it is there, and it is beautiful, and it is alive. Not everything needs to be a data point. Not every moment of attention needs to be useful. Sometimes a butterfly in afternoon light is simply a butterfly in afternoon light, warm-winged and purposeful, and briefly, perfectly present. And that is enough. That has always been enough. Scientists working on biomimicry, the application of biological principles to engineering, have found in butterfly wings a rich source of ideas. The structural colors of butterfly scales have inspired new approaches to producing colors without dyes. Colors that don't fade, that change with angle, that can be tuned by adjusting the nanostructure of a surface. The wing structure itself, thin membrane reinforced by a network of veins, has informed the design of lightweight structural panels for applications in aerospace and architecture. The water-collecting ability of certain butterfly wing surfaces, which can gather moisture from fog and channel it toward the body, has inspired designs for materials that can harvest water from air in arid environments. 200 million years of quiet refinement is, it turns out, a very useful head start. The poet Gerard Manley Hopkins wrote about dragonflies, not butterflies, but his idea of inscape, the individual, irreducible quality of a thing that makes it exactly what it is, feels apposite here. Every butterfly species has its own inscape, its particular way of flying, its particular palette, its particular habitat and host plant and time of year. The small copper, with its vivid orange forewing and its habit of perching high on a flower stem to survey its territory, is entirely itself. The pearl-bordered fritillary, found in clearings in ancient woodland, needing a precise combination of violets and open sunny patches and dappled shade, is entirely itself. The holly blue, cycling between holly and ivy as its host plants across a season, appearing and disappearing in the garden year after year, is entirely itself. Each one irreplaceable, not because species are never lost. They always have been, but because each one is the outcome of its own long history, its own branch of the tree of life, its own particular answer to the question of how to live in a world of specific constraints. I am not sure I have a tidy conclusion to offer. I am not sure there is one. Butterflies have been in the world for longer than anything we would recognize as human. They have been transforming and being transformed through ice ages and warm periods, through the rise and fall of forests, through 5 mass extinctions, through the slow accumulation of all the time that came before the first person sat in a garden and watched a butterfly and thought, "What is that?" They do not need our attention to continue, but they are, it turns out, deeply worth attending to. Not because they carry meaning, not in any cosmic sense, but because paying attention to something small and living and complex is its own kind of meaning. And there are worse ways to spend a quiet evening than sitting still and letting the slow world of butterflies settle gently around you. And so, very gently, we have come to the end of tonight. You have traveled in the quiet of this hour, through scales and chrysalises and migrations, through ancient forests and Arctic tundra and Central American canopies, through the chemical memory of caterpillars, and the navigational knowledge of a creature born knowing the way south. And now it is time to let all of that drift. Let the wings fold. Let the colors darken. Let the chrysalis close. Feel the weight of your body now, where it meets the surface beneath you, warm and still. Feel the air against your skin, the slow rise and fall of your breath. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to hold anything. Somewhere out there, in a garden you will never see, a butterfly is resting on a leaf in the dark. Wings folded. Still. Waiting for morning. The way it has always waited. Without worry, without fear. Just resting. Just that. Let your eyes close, if they haven't already. The wings are still. The night is soft. And everything can wait until morning. Sleep.